Keeping well. For those of you in Australia who've had a short week, I hope you enjoyed your weekend. Last weekend, many of you have reached out this week. Thank you so much. There's been a ton of questions and conversations that I've been having with you. So thank you for those. I will try and answer some of those in a future tech tip conversation around. I think we've addressed a couple of multi-factor questions last time. If you do have any questions around that, please let me know. Hopefully that addressed it. Cyber insurance was the topic we had with Sam last week. Very important. Now, for those of you who have Fortinet, FortiGates, please make sure that there is a CVE out for these needing to be addressed. So you are updating those with the latest patches and vulnerability covering what is out there these days. Now, there's been a ton of conversations around startups that I've met recently, and it's been really enjoyable. And many of you have asked me the question around, when you're doing a SaaS startup or you're doing an application startup, what do I need to keep in mind? And do you know what? Nothing better than to have the person who writes the book, Kick Some SaaS, Stewart, join the conversation. Stewart, welcome.
Morning, Kristof. Thank you.
Pleasure, matey. Thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate that the book, Kick Some SaaS, has been out now, and it is certainly giving people some insights around building a SaaS platform and managing it. Is that a fair point?
Well, I hope so. That was the point of writing it, certainly, is where I started.
Excellent. Now, the conversation we had, and it was a very interesting one, was around what is it that, as a startup or a SaaS or an application provider, what is it that we need to do to take some steps so that we have some success in the roadmap?
Look, I mean, first questions I ask absolutely every single SaaS person I talk to, whether they are early stage or well into millions of revenue, is what problem are you solving and whose problem is it? Those two, absolutely fundamental. Those are absolute core to everything you do.
And once we've got that determined, so I mean, obviously there's a bit around let's making sure we've got a vision. So someone's got a clear vision, they've understood their market, they've gone, all right, great, I know the niche as I'm trying to address it. So once we're at that point, what are the next steps? Give us some ideas as to what they need to consider.
How are you going to pay for it? That seems to be a big challenge for a lot of people. I mean, there's a lot of people who will remortgage the house, sell one of the kids, offload a kidney or something like that, and build a big pile of money. That's the first problem, because these things are expensive. Now, if you're lucky, for anything really worth talking about, 250,000 is a kind of number you want to be running around with, simply because you've got to get to market. It's your first job, and then you've got to survive once you've gone to market, because you don't earn millions on day one. So you've got to feed yourself both sides of going to market. So that's the first thing. Make sure you've got some money.
Okay, once you've got the money, the core credentials are obviously there. You found you found a developer, someone that you know, someone you've been referred to. What are the sort of next steps? I mean, we considered that, all right, we've got the ideation point.
Yep.
Moving on to creation. What are we looking at?
Well, the next job you've got to do is, and I'll make as a sort of a rash sort of broad brush, that the people who are starting SaaS businesses are generally domain experts. They are people who've seen a problem and think, right, I can make some money doing that now. So what they have to do is transfer everything they know to the people with a keyboard at their fingers. And that's a hard job, right? I mean, that's a genuinely difficult thing, because we've got years and years of entrenched knowledge. You and I have been doing our shtick for many years. We know a whole bunch of stuff. How do you explain that to somebody who isn't familiar with it? And that's a real problem. So we have to go through a process where we write a specification at some point. I recommend strongly that people create glossaries of terms, so that we've got a common language that we can refer to, that we can all share. And we have to go through this process. And it's just a long, slow, horribly painful process, in truth. And it's worth it, but you got to do it.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, to get to an MVP or a minimal viable product is probably a gate that we would like to see as a first level.
Yep.
Obviously, when we're talking about this, one of the key facets that I certainly get engaged in conversations is that you've got to be able to build something with scale in mind, not just an immediate sense of here's what I need it to do today, and then when I get to this point, I'm going to spend a lot more money to restart it all over again. What are things that you think that you've seen through your experiences that people don't take in mind in that early stages?
So this is one of those not shooting yourself in the foot things, which is like, well, okay, I would like tomorrow to have 10,000 customers. They're going to be using the system repeatedly, blah, blah. So you have to build with a scalable architecture. And hopefully your development partners are going to be all over this and get it right for you. But in practical terms for MVPs, I describe an MVP as the least that works and delivers value. And this is kind of like, there's a need to be ruthless. I can't think of a better word for it than that, which is how do I pare back everything I'm doing to the barest essentials of functionality and value that I deliver to the client so that they can start making money today. And if we keep it at that, then we should be able to scale beyond that.
And that's an interesting point you say, right? I mean, scale is one thing. And then making sure that you're developing on that from the onset is something that's obviously considered, because we've talked about legacy frameworks of technology and architecture for a while now. The world's moved on, right? The ability to create a MVP off, some infrastructure that you have left around, or even to just run up as an infrastructure in a private cloud provider, public cloud provider, etc., is all good and well. The concern that we speak about is that when you start with let's call it a legacy architecture design, the whole concept of 3-layered architecture and everything else, when we're talking about a SaaS or an application as such that's going to change the world, what are the key elements that people forget when we talk about that from a user interface perspective?
Look, it's really difficult. There's a broad, a very broad area here to shoot at, because it depends on what we're building.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, if we're building Flappy Birds, then we're building something that's only got one control, which is tap. I mean, that's pretty much it, right? If we are getting into the B2B space and we're building something serious, then there is a style of UI that lends itself to business operation and so on. And then there's another one in the middle, which is our high volume, low value market, which is the typical, what we kind of think of as often as the typical simple SaaS world. The Gmails of the world, which have really simple user interfaces, which really, in truth, don't do a vast amount of things. So we've got these different segments, and it's important that we focus on getting the message across to the right people, because one is used as a sales model, one is used as a value delivery model. So there are different perspectives on it.
Excellent. Now, what would you think of during this development cycle, people considering a zero trust approach to their development life cycle?
I believe in the book I'm quoted as my approach to these things is the answer's no. What's the question? It is a reasonable assumption in the modern world that you have to protect everything you're doing, and that everybody out there is a decent human, has the best intentions, and will get it wrong. Because that's what we do, right? So
yeah, look, I mean, as you said, we come out with all the best of intentions, and making sure that as you go along that life cycle, you certainly start to make sure that you take in mind that there are other people out there that will take advantage of your software platform, etc., for the validity of data. Now, we've gone and talked about, all right, we've got the ideation, we've gone to MVP, looked at creation. Next step is generally on maintaining a platform, which is commonly a misconception, because it's that thought that it's set and forget and then off it goes.
We can but dream, right?
Yeah, well, hence why, what is it in your experience that people, one, don't consider, and two, what should they consider in maintaining an application?
It's expensive. First thing, it is just expensive. Everybody wants to continue getting paid. Everybody wants to eat. Everybody wants a roof over their head, and so on. So owning software is expensive. I have a little picture I put up periodically when I post, which is the cost of ownership distinction between pre-MVP and post-MVP. And basically, if you just draw a line, if you imagine looking at your screen now, you just draw a line in the bottom left-hand corner that goes to the top right-hand corner, and then draw a vertical line. It creates a little triangle in the bottom left-hand corner, which is your pre-MVP cost of ownership. And then on the right-hand side, there is the great big wedge that occupies essentially half the screen, which is your post-MVP cost of ownership. So they are chalk and cheese. You've done the hard work. You've got to market. You haven't died at the first hurdle. Well done. Congratulations. Now it's going to get expensive. It's going to get big, and the demands on you are just going to keep growing. And this is going back to the notion of scale. When people talk about scale, they think about getting more customers. But scale isn't just about getting more customers. It is about more of absolutely everything you already have, and then a bucket load of stuff that you don't yet have. And I talk about it in terms of the spokes of a wheel, that at the center, they're all really close together. By the time the wheel gets really big, you've got these great big gaps that you've got to start filling in.
Yeah, and it's an interesting point you made, right? I mean, that life cycle, especially around development, is making sure that development life cycle gives clarity and visibility, because you are going to have multiple areas, multiple development teams working together on this as you scale, because you can't necessarily rely on one person or one team as you do. So having that framework from the start does allow for that scalability. And to your point, there is going to be costs involved, and how you manage and mitigate those is certainly something that's crucial along that life cycle. Steve, that was some brilliant insights. What it would be the key takeaway you would leave with everyone based on this, especially when they're talking about SaaS as a platform?
Look, owning a SaaS business is a lifestyle choice, and you've got to play the long game. That's it. There are, you see them, I see bump into them occasionally, the guys who think they've got a good idea and they go to market and they give themselves a ludicrous valuation, obviously with the intent of trying to find a buyer and getting out quickly with the money and moving on. Now, for every one of those, there's 1,000 people who are just trying to do the right thing and have a go at it. And it's about the long game. Really, I mean, that's my message to everyone on this is you've got to set yourself up and think, well, I'm going to be here in 10 years' time.
Good point.
Don't try and run, because you're going to run out of puff. You run out of runway ever so quickly in the SaaS world. I'm talking to some guys in a couple of weeks. They've just got something like 4.5 million in development resources ready to go and start their process. And it sounds great, but it's money you can burn through so quickly without focus. So you've got to sit down and say, right, this is my plan. This is where I'm going to be. This is how we're going to do this for the next foreseeable future.
And making sure you stick to it and review.
Trying to stick to it, right? Because no plan survives first contact with the enemy. So I mean there's a harsh reality that comes into this. But yeah, you've got to be this sort of good long-term perspective. That's my core model for absolutely.
Brilliant insights. Thank you, Stewart. That was really wonderful. I hope that's answered a couple of your questions that we've seen. I know that you and myself, Stewart, were at Digital Transformation Live, where we spoke to a couple of startups about this. So brilliant insights as always. Thank you, everyone, for your questions around these startups and around the software application life cycles. Any further questions, by all means, comment below. Stewart, where can they buy the book, Kick Some SaaS?
Well, I always have one handy, and in the back corner, wherever it is, up there somewhere. You can get on Amazon. If you just search online for Kick Some SaaS, you pretty much find it. You can get it at Amazon, Booktopia, I think, various places. Or alternatively, you can send me cold hard cash, which I'm always happy to look after for people.
Not Bitcoin, not Dogecoin.
No. All genuine proper currencies.
Excellent. All right, guys. Stewart, he's attached on the link in the description above, so feel free to reach out to him. As always, thank you so much, Stewart, for appreciating some time with you on these questions. And everyone, as I like to say, be safe online. Think before you click. The boogeyman is certainly out there. Have a wonderful weekend. Talk to you soon.
Thanks, Kristof.